somebody just brought up, because they listened to us the last time we were live, and they were really intrigued with you when you started talking about using dairy. And can you address some of the concerns and what happens with different kinds of foods with acne?
So this kind of goes back to a lot of times why, my mother was born in 1910. She died when she was 94. And she used to say, I don't know, we had acne as teenagers, but we didn't have it when we got to be adults. It's like you always got told as a teenager, don't worry, it'll go away. So why is it an epidemic today? Well, one of the reasons has to do with two things. So one is dairy. Now, this is a study that was published in the in the American Academy of Dermatology, the Mosby Blue Book. It's the most technical journal that dermatologists get every month. It was a study done on 47,000 nurses. It was repeated on the sons and daughters of the nurses. Then they did 3,000 teenage girls and 3,000 teenage boys.
Wow.
And conclusively, there's no doubt about this, milk causes or exacerbates acne. Now, it's not because we give hormones to cows. It's because whether you buy your milk at Whole Foods, your organic milk, or whether you buy it at Safeway, we milk cows in the U.S. when they're pregnant. Now, in nature, if a cow becomes pregnant, they automatically push the calf away and they don't allow it to nurse. Because what's happening is there's steroidal hormones. And
Right.
you can go buy a quart of milk, and if you want to pay to get it tested, you're going to find out that there's a whole collection of steroidal hormones. So milk is an issue, and that means it's milk, it's ice cream, it's yogurt. So we're these huge yogurt eaters. And I could go into other reasons why milk isn't really necessary and all of that, but we don't have time to go into that now. The second part of this has to do with the glycemic load. That's different than the glycemic index. So glycemic index is pretty straightforward. If I held up a Snicker bar, you'd say, yeah, that's got a lot of sugar. That's got to be high on the glycemic index, right? Glycemic load has to do with how is this food processed when you eat it. So what happens is your liver dumps glucose into your bloodstream in virtually every cell of your body. Some foods actually turn into more sugar when they're being digested. So if I said, Sue, bring me the best piece of whole wheat bread that you can possibly find, so nutritious. And then I held up a quarter cup of sugar and I said, so which of these do you think is worse? Well, everybody's going to say, well, of course, the sugar. The bread will turn more sugar into more sugar in that process than the sugar. Now, what happens is, and it also affects aging as well, but what happens is with regard to acne, is that as we get older, and I hear this all the time, so somebody will say, well, gee, I had some acne as a teenager, but then it kind of went away and my skin was clear. Or I didn't have any acne. I was in the 2 percentile, no acne. And then when I was, 22, all of a sudden I got acne. Or when I was 30. Okay, so here's what happens. As you age, your insulin levels aren't as stable. Doesn't mean you have diabetes, but you're not going to have the same stability at 30 that you did at 15 or whatever. And particularly when you're eating diets that can be high in carbs. So that's not just eating, bagels and bread and sugar, fruits, everything has carbs. So I shouldn't say that. Meat is 0 carbs. There's certain things that don't have carbs. But at any rate, when you add it together collectively, most Americans are on fairly high carb diets. So what happens is when you get these spikes in blood sugar that cause your blood sugar to go high, your body levels that off and takes it down by producing more testosterone.
Oh, there's the key.
Okay. And I could get into another long dialogue how this affects particularly the adult acne, different than teenage acne, where it's perioral and on the jawline and very stubborn and fails Accutane. So it has to do with certain enzymes you have in your follicle. It has to do with certain hormones outside the follicle, like testosterone. We have almost as much testosterone as men do. It's bound by proteins. And it keeps us from having, a deep voice and a big hairy face and a hairy chest. But you can be producing a little free testosterone. You can, and it's not going to show up on a blood test, or you could be
Right.
testosterone sensitive.
Because it
And what happens
spikes.
is it gets together with these enzymes in your follicle that are harmless. And when they shake hands, it produces dihydrotestosterone,
Hmm.
instant acne in this area. Now, we have something in duality in the retinol chamber that helps to block that, keeps them from shaking hands. And there's other ways to block it as well. But suffice it to say that diet can be an important component. Okay, so dairy and that glycemic load. And it doesn't mean that if you do avoid dairy and you keep your glycemic load down, it doesn't mean all of a sudden your acne is going to go away. But I will tell you that it can be at the root of it and there can be great improvement. And the other thing is, I want to say, is that when you have a diet high in sugar, which we tend to, is that glucose that comes out of your liver, what it does is it also attaches itself to your collagen. And it decreases the collagen and it makes it harder and less flexible. And do you know that if you change the diet, if you eat lower carb diet, that in just 2 weeks, you can have a 25% improvement.
Wow. That's really interesting because, I've always been trained to check for hormonal, breakout, but, sometimes you go straight to what are they doing for birth control because we know that sometimes that activates it, but that's my aha today, one of my ahas. But